Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well. We are getting started today, October 22nd, on this fall morning, or in the southern hemisphere, I guess, spring morning. We are going to be meeting with the hobby coach. So I don't know if anybody's here yet, but for those who are going to be watching this later, welcome. And yeah, let's get started. Oh, looks like we already got some people. Hey, dude, how's it going? Good morning.
Morning. How you doing?
Doing well, thank you. How about yourself?
Pretty good, pretty good. Aside from realizing my camera makes me look like I have an 8 head. Nothing.
It happens, man. It shows off my bald spot, all of that. So it's I noticed in my old like security cameras that we put up, I'd be outside walking and it would make of just it like aged me like 20 years down the road. I was like,
And
great.
you're like, oh, fuck, what's that? Hold on,
Yep.
hold on. Yeah,
Yep. Why
yeah,
is it sunburn back here so easy?
yeah, that's rough. That's rough.
Well, good morning. Thanks for joining us, dude. I'm really excited to talk to you because we've kind of talked a little bit about what you want to share and kind of what you're doing, and you've had a lot of big major changes um,
Yeah,
over the
yeah.
last year, 6 months, kind of thing. Things kind of had slow, and then they all happened, and so
Here she is, yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm super pumped to be here today. It's nice to be finally on here instead of just digesting it and chipping sidelines. So it's a nice change.
nice. Um, and you are, is the hobby drop still going, or have you moved? You've moved kind of away from that completely.
No, no, I essentially, yeah, it was there as a vehicle to start with. And when I'll go into it later, but I shifted countries recently and essentially had a friend I know running that in the logistics space. So it's a 3PL now, which
Nice.
basically means someone else is running the warehouse stuff and I just
Yeah.
handle the front end.
Perfect.
I'm rolling it down until non-existence anyway, because as a strange twist of fate, the community I built while I was trying to socially promote the store was far more interesting to engage with and deal with than a store because I just thought, fuck, I can't be asked. So yeah,
Yep.
that's pretty much it.
Awesome. And that evolved into what? The hobby coach?
No, I just changed the name because I got sick of the hobby drop.
Yeah.
I'm fickle as hell, man. Like honestly, I have zero brand loyalty to myself. No, it evolved into a lot of things. To be honest, I recently did a shift because my wife wanted to be closer to home back in New Zealand. I was based in Australia in Sydney, and I actually had a store set up in the works there. I had plans for a full scale, what I call like a net studio, right? Like it's
Okay.
a net cafe. But essentially, it's an airbrush studio, very similar to the Japan and Korean vibe studios you've seen.
Yep.
Had leasing agreements and everything in place for that, and ended up having to bail on all of that. So I'm not one to bail on things by halves. So I basically went, okay, all of that's done. So I need to think of something new, which was great, actually, because it gave
Yeah.
me the chance to, I guess, wholesale pivot into some other stuff when I came back over here. So put some mitigations in place, gave logistics ownership to a friend, rented out a small warehouse, and just let that do its thing.
I like it. That's how life goes sometimes, right?
That's it. That's
Yeah.
it. It's in a flow, dude.
Yeah. You gotta go with the flow. Definitely got to work with it, and I think sometimes it can really like work in our favor in terms of just life changes that happen.
You're not wrong. Not
Like
wrong.
change is inevitable. I think as much as we fight it, whether it's learned behavior or just something deep in our gut, like it happens. And so I think when you can make the most of it and work with those changes and work with the new hand that's dealt, then it makes it a lot easier.
That's the game.
Yeah,
It's also easier to say than it is to do, right? That's
without a doubt.
yeah.
Definitely one of the hardest things. So, as you
Sorry.
know, I'm not a no. You're all good. I'm not immune to crazy life changes. So,
Right?
you're on either. So yeah, looks like you got a couple of people starting to join hydro and stuff like that.
Awesome, awesome. So
Yeah.
about it. All right. So essentially, what I ended up doing when I moved over to New Zealand is spinning up a Chipwreck's here too. So spinning up some other small stores over here, some online stuff in the hobby space, but separate, not really for Gundam. And spent a lot of introspection time kind of going through what I wanted to do for a career full time. And I realized that everything I had done throughout the vast volume of different roles I'd had in the corporate space, the not-for-profit space, the leadership space, the common theme was coaching and mentoring.
Okay.
So after really pulling that apart, I kind of delved into it full retard, for lack of a better term. And here I am. I've spun up my own coaching practice. I've been doing it full time for about 6 months now,
Nice.
and it's amazing. It's
That's
absolutely amazing.
awesome.
I finally have a paid excuse to digest YouTube all day. It's brilliant. It's
There
brilliant.
you go. Do you have clients already and things like that, or are you kind of going
Yeah,
through? Fantastic.
yeah.
Um,
So, a couple of private clients, mostly in the leadership space. I've got a couple in some of the major corps in Australia, which is nice. I've got one or two friends I know that were in the middle tech space to upper tech space, just
yeah.
about to become principals. Sorry, like principal engineers and
Yeah.
principal technicians, to use Amazon terminology. And then I've got a couple of small corps that I'm doing some teamwork with, work in their teams to make them more efficient, business reformation process, stuff like
Yeah.
that. So it's good. It's really good.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm familiar with it, but I think people who aren't familiar with it, how would you kind of describe coaching? I think because there's kind of like I think with anything when it comes to kind of mental health or well-being or even just kind of more goal focused or kind of goal orientation, say as in coaching, like there's a misconception to a lot of it.
I couldn't agree more. So, first of all, I'm going to apologize to everyone because I'm a huge gesticulator. My throat is wrecked at the moment because I have a cold, but I wave a lot and I rant and rave. I also have a whiteboard, which I'll probably go to later because I'm a hugely visual explainer.
Yes,
But
please.
I tend to look at it as these two things, right? There's a couple of misconceptions about coaching. The first of all, that it's like discount therapy, right?
Yep.
And I have a personal pet peeve against that bias or that belief system because it's not.
Yeah.
There are plenty of what you call remedial coaches who will spend a lot of time in the space of your trauma and managing things like anxiety, depression, and how you feel. And in that space, you have a lot of things like Reiki practitioners, energy manipulators, all these kinds of things that are about trying to make people remediate and feel better in therapy type activities, right?
Yes.
And there's a lot of friction, is probably the best way to put it, between that style of coach and therapists, because they tend to be quite at loggerheads. And that makes sense, right? If you've got someone who doesn't have to do 10 years of highly classified and difficult training, just coming in and going, hey, good news, I can make you feel better, then they get a bit touchy, or the best way to put
Yeah.
it.
Definitely. Yep.
And then there's the separate side of coaching, and that deals more with progress, right? And the easiest way to put it is, if you look at a sports team, they hire a coach to learn techniques, they hire a coach to learn better mindsets, they hire a coach to learn better goal setting, they hire a coach to learn to be better,
Yep.
right? A coach never comes in and just goes kick the ball faster and harder, right? He's always about how you play with the team, how you look at your life, how you balance that with nutrition, physiology, exercise, strength and conditioning, all these kinds of things. So I tend to rift coaching into those two buckets, right? You've got the remediation focused coaching and the progress and success focused coaching. And the easiest way to explain what a coach does is probably explaining how I do it, because everyone's kind of different based on their history, their experience, their knowledge, all those kinds of things.
Yep.
And I tend to tell people that I take anecdotes, analogies, distinctions, and my job is to kind of make you have a braingasm, right? It's about bringing about insight.
Yep.
So it's about walking you through a topic and helping you engage with that topic, and then encouraging you to engage more and more to a point where you then go, oh, fuck, okay, that makes sense, right? Because if you have that realization for yourself, it's easy to understand. Otherwise, you just kind of shut it off, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's had help before, right?
Yep.
It just comes in and you're like, okay, cool, but fuck you, I know better, right?
Yeah.
Because it's my life.
It's just an opinion. It's not me. Like I don't hear that in my head. Like I haven't had that realization.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all noise, right? You all have well-meaning partners. You all have well-meaning parents and siblings, most of us. And you tend to just go, cool story, and put it to the side. what a coach will do traditionally is step with you into a goal-based space, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the easiest way to say that is, or figure that out is, it's a lie. So working within four goals is easy, right? It's really easy. Someone comes to you and goes, "Hey, I want to lose 10 kg," and you go, "Great. What's your plan? How are you going to execute? What makes you scared to do it? Okay, let's deal with that." But where it gets really tricky is when you take people beyond their goals or the goals that they believe they have. And that's where it's fun to play as a coach, right? I want to lose 10 kg. Why do you want to lose 10 kg? What is impacting your life and what biases are forming you thinking you need to lose 10 kg? If you lost 10 kg easily, where do you want to be in 5 years? Right? Do you want to
Yep.
be eight packed out? Do you just want to have a beach body? What kind of sustainable practices are you going to put in place to get there? So it's about looking at that longer game. So as people come in, you redirect them and make them think slightly differently. And then it's about opening sorry, my camera's over here, Pandora's box of their brain,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because then you start going, okay, I have this thought and this belief. How did that come from? Where did it come from? What stories am I telling? What values am I using? What outside influences and communities are affecting that? And it's about pulling all of those apart and helping them realize where and how it's not serving them and where and how something better could.
Nice.
Does that make sense?
For sure. To me, it does,
Cool.
without a doubt.
Good. I hope it makes sense to other people.
Yeah. My wife worked as a coach for a little bit. She went through a couple of different certifications up here and things like that. So it was always something she really wanted to get into, and was a way that she felt that she could help people, because she also really took an interest in like psychology and wanting to be maybe work in therapy and things like that. But she felt that coaching was a way to kind of in some way apply a bit of that understanding, a bit of that schooling, or essentially logic, right,
Yep.
through scientific studies, to a situation that can help people essentially move more fluidly through the changes in their life, but also in a lot of ways be more proficient in management of goals and time and energy and things like that, because of like the understandings we were talking about of all of these different forces that are impacting them. So it is a bit of like, yeah, goal management. I'm going to make you better. You're going to run faster. You're going to throw further. But you also now understand why you're able to do that, or what was inhibiting you prior to that. That is those kind of aha realizations that you're looking for when doing coaching.
I love that sentence you used, moving people through or managing through the process of it. Because at that point, the goal almost becomes a byproduct, right?
Yep.
My practice is really simple. I call it Be Better, which is about being better, right? You teach people to be better, and then everything kind of takes care of itself. If you work with people that are performers, high performers, high achievers, whatever you want to call them, it's not always leadership. It's usually people who have that thing, right? I tend to find a lot of hobbyists in this space.
Yep.
Something clicks in their head and they just go full on. They're in
Yep.
there. Ignoring neurodiversity and ADHD hyperfocus, that's
Yep.
separate. A lot of people tend to project, boom, nail it. And if you have that mindset already, it's just about teaching people.
Right.
You just teach them. You just teach them. Here's the shit that you're telling yourself that's getting in the way. Here's a really good reason why it shouldn't get in your way. Get your shit done.
Yep.
And if you teach them that, then you're not their parent. You just step off. You're like, cool, good for you. And they go full on, because then they can just fly. Right?
Yep.
And that's really what I love. That's really my jam. When I see people start really taking off, it's incredible. It's incredible. And I that's amazing that your wife's doing so well in that space. And rolling in coaching is, again, it's quite ephemeral because there is no standardization. You've got a couple of certifications available in a couple of major bodies, totally. But the trick is none of those are official.
Yeah.
It was just a different coach that's like, well, I can teach people to coach, get my certification and pay me some money, right? So it just depends on how you look at it and where you look at it. You just really have to get to know the individual. But mostly it's understanding of psychology. It's understanding of habits and behaviors. It's understanding of a good grounding in logic, as you say, which is a great call out. And it's a good understanding of how the brain works, right?
Yep.
Because the vast majority of what we do, as you would know more than anyone being in the mental health space and doing these kinds of casts, is we're trapped in these bullshit cycles that our brain does. And we think, and this is what I want to delve into today. Sorry, I'm going to use a lot of air quotes like a complete wank, but
No, that's good, man.
essentially, thought is not what we think it is, but we think all these things, right?
Yep.
And we believe that thinking is us, and therefore we are the shitty thing. And that's where it has that negative impact in the mental health space, because it's not just about fooling myself about fear of a goal or fear of this or fear of that. It's like, I'm not good enough. I don't have a sense of self-worth. I have all these recurring negative thoughts. How do I disengage from that process? All that kind of stuff is actually more about the brain's physiology than it is about any kind of relation to yourself. So as we walk through that kind of stuff with people, it's light switches go on. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it doesn't. I tend to use really shitty 90s movies references and terrible dad jokes, and I find it lands for a lot of people.
I think it's really because you have to, you probably know this, but for people who don't, I think in a lot of ways, and this is the goal of the Cerulean, it's how you communicate this information. Because this misinformation can be really overwhelming, it can be really jarring, it can be startling, where you're like, what am I doing in, like, I could just change my life this easy kind of thing, and people don't, it can be, while it can be really empowering, there's also, it can trip people up a lot of times. And so being able to present it in a way that they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's comfortable. It's something that that's approachable and digestible, I think. And I like that about coaching, because I feel like it helps a lot of these more complex, hard wirings that we have of the brain and things like that. It helps in the understanding of that. And going through years of therapy, you begin to gain understandings of that, especially if you're like something where you're like, oh, tell me about this. And, oh, I operate in that way. And you go home and you start researching it and come back and you yearn for this deeper understanding of self and the complexities of our brain and ultimately how we are conditioned, things like that. There's loops that we're stuck in through traumas and experiences and things like that, the thing about coaching is I've always found it cuts to the chase. Therapy really wants to work through things. I think it's important to have a therapist when doing coaching, because there might be aha moments where you're just like, it's kind of too heavy for, I think, a coach and a client to take on sometimes. Too personal, things like that. It kind of steps outside of the lane of coaching. And so I think it's important again, and that's where I always talk about having a team, a healthcare team, and a coach can be a part of that, just as a therapist can, or a general practitioner, or a loved one, things like that. Like, you have these teams, and so it's great to hear you talk about it in that way, because it is difficult, I think, for people to kind of grasp, because it does seem like for a lot of people it's like Tom Robbins kind of thing, like. Yeah. Get up on stage and like, your life's gonna be better, like follow these 6 steps, like
38th level intense in the motivational space, right? Look, it's what I'm hearing you saying is exactly how I would relay it as well. It's part of a healthy support structure for someone. It's part of a healthy growth structure for someone. I market myself as a personal and professional growth coach, right? I'm not in here to ridicule you or figure out what things are going wrong in your life. I'm not here to listen to sad stories. I'm not here to condone victimhood. I'm not here for martyrs. I'm here to take you from that space and make you realize that that's a fucking dumb way to live life and that there is a better way. But anything identified within there, you're 100% correct. Therapy is a very, very strong basis. I can go through a quick Cliff Note version of what my life has looked like, so that people don't think I'm talking out a hole in my ass. Sorry, that's I don't know if that's just a New Zealand saying.
No, hole in the ass is, yeah, I mean, we don't use it up here, but I'm aware of it, yeah.
Yeah, there's two key sayings, right? And I'll probably throw them in. There's hole in my ass. I'm talking out a hole in my ass, which it means disingenuous. It's a very New Zealand thing. And then you have a saying that I love from Australia, where that shits me. And it means fury, right? I'm really pissed off.
That really shits me?
That shits me. I brought that with me from Australia, and I've told all my friends here, and they love it. It's fucking great.
I love it.
Say it there. I swear to God. I have American friends that I talk to that are here, and I say it, and you're like, oh, that's incredible.
Shits me.
It really shits me.
Really shits me.
And the misconception that coaching and therapy are the same really shits me. I would look at it this way. Right, and it's a very simple analogy. you look at someone who has a physical ailment, right? We go to a GP or a doctor or whoever your local is, and they say, okay, that's a really serious issue. You've got to go to the surgeon. So you go to what ends up happening with your insurance cycle, right? It's the same in almost every country with different names. You go to some kind of specialist who is very, very qualified in that one thing. You get a series of scans and you do this cycle where they get paid really, 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 really well. And then you go to the surgeon who does the operation or the surgery or what have you, and it's very specific. It's usually very insular. It's usually very isolated. It's targeted. All these synonyms for one thing that they're really, really focused in on, and they do it to an extreme level. And that's therapy. Therapy is going to rehabilitate trauma.
Yep.
It's going to step in, it's going to target trauma, and you're going to learn ways to cope, manage, and work through that trauma, which is a hugely imperative part of the job. A coach sits more in a physiotherapist, right? And I hope for a lot of you, you've had, or not actually, had to go to a lot of physios, but I have. With a lot of martial arts, I've been broken in many, many ways. And
I currently have one here in the city that I see weekly. So, and they're
physios,
crucial.
Crucial. The concept that you can go to a GP and be like, my knee doesn't work properly, and they can say, well, you should just do these 5 things. And you're like, wait, you've never actually studied physiology. You did it for a semester 17 years ago. No, I'm going to go talk to a guy whose life, or girl, whose life is literally just working with knees.
Yep.
So a physio is like a coach. You go in, they have a deep knowledge of physiology. They don't know your sport. They don't know your job. They don't know how you walk or jump or run. They can figure that out through their deep knowledge of physiology. That is coaching. And what they're going to do is teach you tools for management and coping and then thriving. But in a physical sense.
Yep.
So a coach is like that for your brain. Does that make sense as a distinction?
Oh yeah, for sure. For me, it does. I think, and because I think one thing too is like with a physical therapist, you're going to get homework also, which is something that a coach is going to provide too, because you have to put in work. You're learning new sets of tools or how to hone tools that you may have picked up in therapy and things like that through, again, management and just kind of dealing with who you are.
Yeah, it's about discovery. And at the end of the day, everything is about self-discovery. Self-growth, self-discovery, everything is literally where you are on the journey to that, right? What I tend to find now is, yes, there is a lot of people that are riddled with the need for medication and various mental health issues. But the only progress I ever had through that space myself was when I spent more time going internally. And they always became bigger issues. Not ran from them, but when I didn't confront them, I let them snowball. And they always come back and they're repetitive. And it becomes, once you're aware of that cycle and the cycles that form those kinds of triggers, you can become someone who then mitigates that or goes, oh, here it comes. I know it's coming. Okay, now I've got 2 days before it's going to be real fucking bad. All right, prep everything, get my mind right. I know it's going to be rough, right? Management, mitigation techniques, all these kinds of things. I might just go through a quick blitz of kind of my life history again. So
yeah, please do.
Because as we go into the therapy and coaching side of it, what it actually does, a huge part of my personal value set is making people know that I'm not just, I didn't just Google a certificate and now I'm here trying to tell you how to live your life.
No, please do. I'd love to hear it.
So you can find all of this on my website because for some reason I thought it'd be a good idea to put my life story online in a deep act of vulnerability and then had a little cry to myself at night after it went live. It's only marginally terrifying. So you can just go to bebetter.nz, so okay. NZ, and there's actually my full story there, or at least a good Cliff Note version. But to summarize, I am the child of a broken home. Both my parents were alcoholics, but my mum ghosted us when I was about 2.5. Until about 10, where my dad died, I came home and found him. We were the only 2 people. Both my parents were adopted. We have no extended family. From there, I lived with my mother through a large series of violence and abuse, both in the emotional and physical space, as well as some other types that are always good fun. Always surrounded with uncles and drunk uncles. I have had accidents. I've been involved in violence and a lot of less than legal activities. I've had broken relationships, violent relationships, physical abuse, verbal abuse, emotional abuse. The alcoholism was rife. I got kicked out at the age of 15. I spent a bunch of time on the street. Started getting my shit together while I was putting myself through high school, back on the street again because I thought I knew better. Again, working full time throughout to put myself through high school and university, or at least our equivalent of university down here. And then moving into a corporate and professional career. Before I made that change, though, I kind of hit an ultra low point where I was with this lady who was intensely manic depressive. She was attempting suicide several times a week, and I was with her for a few years. And my stepdaughter, I was managing her, my stepdaughter, and working 16 to 18 hours a day while I was about 20 for a good couple of years before I just lost everything. At that point, I ballooned up quite heavily to about 160 plus kgs. I think that's roughly 350-ish pounds.
Wow.
So it's like round as a human being is probably the best way to put it. There's a point where you can't see your dick anymore, and you know that's a warning sign, but then you forget it ever existed and you're fine, right? So you become quite round. Seriously, one of the biggest milestones at that point was, hey, look, I can see my elbow. Like I have an elbow and a knee. It's pretty crazy. So yeah, I was quite huge there. I suffered with addiction. I suffered with just deeply ingrained terrible behaviors. And then, like any good worker or any child of trauma, I turned that to chronic workaholism. So I got in shape, I got everything cleaned. I thought I was living the best life. Physiologically, totally. Right? I got in better shape. I was smashing martial arts, ramped that right up, been doing it aggressively for almost 20 years. Everything from just everything in that space. And yeah, heavy hobby work, but chronic workaholism. So I kind of have spent almost 20 years in the corporate and not-for-profit space, and mostly in the tech sector doing heavy project work. We're talking like cyclic 16, 18-hour days for months on end. I've had 4 major work-related burnouts, physiological and emotional just crashes. What else? I fucked up a bunch of relationships and friendships. That's been fun. Every time you think you know what you're doing, you fuck it up. It's always good fun. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of illegal street racing because it was a community that I landed in, a lot of alcohol involved. I have watched a lot of my friends die, including some that flipped in front of us, and I watched them burn up in a car accident. It was good times.
Wow.
I've lost my father, my mother recently to leukemia a couple of years ago after a very extended battle that took, I think, 3.5 years of weekly transfusions and a slow creep towards death after I tried to make amends with her. I've lost 2 stepfathers as well. I'm one of the few people I know that's lost 4 parents.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a laundry list of shit. So
Yeah.
all of that to say, therapy is fucking amazing, and I've spent heavy 6 figures on it, right? At no point will I ever shit on therapy. I think therapy is an integral part of life. I think it's sad that it's not part of an integrated school system. I think it's deplorable that we're not taught that mental health and dealing with someone like that, who is a very qualified life professional working with trauma, is not encouraged. It's a stigma at the moment, which is
it's
insane.
like a joke job. Like it's you there's something wrong with you. Like
it blows my mind because I have literally spent thousands of hours with therapists, hundreds of thousands of dollars on therapy. I love therapy. It's great.
And it's not to say there aren't bad therapists.
Oh, totally. But there's also bad surgeons and bad physiotherapists and bad GPs, right? Do your homework.
Exactly. So you have to, and at a certain point, you need a general practitioner. You need a surgeon. Like I had to talk to a surgeon and get an MRI for my shoulder, and he was just like, "Got to go to the physical therapist." Mm-hmm. And you're just like, "Okay,
all right, man." And like a surgeon, if you need a surgeon, you research the fuck out of that, right? Because you're like, no, you are gonna know. You don't cut me open until I know who you are.
Yeah.
But we let people tinker with our brain, and then we're like, therapy sucks because that dude was an asshole. I dealt with a friend of ours here locally, and they were saying that they had been to couples counseling and it was just a waste of time. And when I delved into it, really dug into it, it was not even really in a coaching session. I was just trying to see where they were at, but they were like, nah, this therapist was just straight up like, you guys should get divorced. And another one of them just yawned at them when they told them their story. It's like, fuck that, dude. I wouldn't have left the therapist. I would have punched them right in the fucking face. As you can tell, I'm a
Yeah,
healthy, balanced
it
individual. But
it's
that,
t- yeah. I've definitely had some therapists who have really fucked up and done some really unprofessional shit, and it just happens. But there's times where you outgrow a therapist. There's a therapist who helps you, and you ultimately outgrow them, and you're like, wow, I feel like I got a real sense of life about myself. Like this can happen. So it's
it's like
yeah,
anything, right? Once the rehabilitation on a broken shoulder is done, you wait for the next injury.
yep,
Where a
exactly.
coach is going, what did you do that fucked your shoulder up? How about we make sure your other one doesn't get fucked up?
Yeah. Well, and it's too, it might be something we're working through with somebody, if we can use a physical therapy analogy all day long. I was working with my physical therapist. They're like, you need to go see a surgeon. We can only do so much. You need to go get an MRI. So once we know, like, and of course I've got a small slap tear, labrum tear, like, but anybody my age is going to have that, like, and it's just all part of it. But then it's
Two
the under
replacements. I feel you.
and then but it's the understanding, right? I just got told some information that sucks. And that really happens a lot with therapy too, because a lot of it's looking at your self-reflection, right? And having these realizations like, oh shit, it's going to take 6 to 12 months to rehab my shoulder. Like, okay, I guess like that's just an investment I'm going to have to make. Or I don't want to keep, having crippling anxiety or depression or always looking at things through a negative lens. Because of stuff that I went through, and so yeah, it's coaching. I think is a way where it's a much more immediate, I think, kind of realization of things, where it's like you need to stop doing this in your life because it's completely derailing you, and it's like as simple as like looking at your phone before bed. And like it's just about managing where you're at better. Like just what do you need to manage in your life so that you can accelerate and achieve all these possibilities. And I think coaching too is a great way to really help foster the ability to manage a state of flow.
I agree. I agree. You touched on two really important points there, which is why I just disappeared and ghosted to
Yeah.
the white. So the time investment, right? And this is something, as someone, it doesn't matter about the coaching thing and what we're discussing here, as someone who's done an immense amount of therapy for a very long time. People always engage in these kinds of support structures when something explodes, right? It's a trauma has happened or a major blowout's happened. You're like, where the fuck did that come from? And then they hear something like, okay, this is going to take 2.5 years. And they have a minor panic attack about it and go, oh, I couldn't do that. And then they avoid it, right? Because it's a big commitment. It's a big commitment of self. It's a big commitment of time. It's a big commitment of money. The way I tend to think of these is it is a journey. It's so cliche to say it's a journey, but it's a journey,
It's a
right?
journey.
And it's an apt metaphor for a reason. But the trick is you can't rehabilitate something that took you 20 years to get in a week. You just can't. You should always expect to spend at least half of that time trying to make it better.
Yep.
But can you recognize very quick and immediate things that make it easier? And that's the therapy journey, right? Easier becomes easier, becomes easier, becomes reformation of thought. Sorry, I'm going to go this way because it's reversed. Reformation of thought becomes better, quote unquote, rehabilitated trauma later on. It will take you a long time to hit that end milestone, sure. But the path is going to be easier every single fucking day. And people get turned off by waiting for over here. They're like, oh, that over here is a big problem. Ah. No, fuck it. Every single day you do that, you are making it easier on yourself. Think of it that way. Every single day, every single session, every single piece of homework or deep inner work or deep inner thought or even not that fucking deep. Just going and sitting somewhere for 5 minutes can help you think through the shit that you've been told to think through.
Yep.
Will make your life better.
Yep.
And people don't know that until they end up doing it and going, oh, fuck, okay, yeah, okay. I can see results relatively quick. It just takes a long time to get to where I need to get to, totally. You're right in the other one, which is the investment of coaching, right? Because coaching does sit in that space. Because we're not rehabilitated by design, Our goal is to go, okay, so you make a lot of excuses for yourself. How can we improve your life immediately and going forwards? So your recognition of that self-introspection, your recognition of that self-growth begins immediately with the coach, because they're not going to sit there and let you dwell. They're not dealing in the, where am I camera wise? They're not going to deal with the past. They're going to jump over and stare at the future, right?
Yeah.
Your mindset has to be pulled towards that future. Where are you at and where are we going and how do we get there? So immediately you start recognizing the exact same thing, right? And your growth becomes exponential from there. I would really love to do, I'm just conscious of time, I would really love to do something on how the brain actually works and where a lot of our thoughts end up kind of popping up and being a pain in the ass.
Yeah, and time's yours, whatever you want to do, yeah.
Wait, let me see if I can get you to see my whiteboard, because again, I'm a scribbler. And if you all judge my handwriting, I will cry. I have terrible handwriting. It looks like a baby turtle that got dropped on its head too much, which is strangely parallel.
Does your handwriting change when you're in the moment and you're like really excited about something, or is it always
Scribbles? Actually, you know what? I might make this a bit easier. 2 seconds. Let's see if I can do this. Yeah, it really can. It's pretty shit to start with, to be honest. Don't have high hopes of my handwriting. Like this is handwriting. Can you see this scroll? It's chicken scratch. It's nothing. It looks like my wife describes it as hieroglyphs. It's terrible.
Hieroglyphs? I like it.
Hieroglyphs,
I write really small, so my stuff looks like it, but then you get close and you're like, oh yeah, I can totally read that.
Let me just try and get over here. Everyone like the look of my hand? That was really lovely, wasn't it?
It's always great.
Oh my God.
Palm reading session.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Oh, okay, cool. Let me see if I can scooch that over. Switching to another tripod. Sorry, guys, technical differences. All right.
You're all good.
So here's my super high-tech eraser. Give me a second.
Beautiful.
So
State of the art.
I know. It's great. It's great. Never underestimate MacGyver. All right. So what I'd love to do is kind of explain how your brain functions and works for or against you. And then essentially a couple of the main systems that we really need to keep aware of, and most of the space that a coach will play in, to be honest, right?
Okay.
And you'll immediately know if this kind of shit actually is appealing and helps you on that journey of self-growth. So your brain isn't your brain. You don't have a single brain, right? And that's the first thing I want to call out for people. How much space do I have here?
Yep.
Good.
Right to...
Okay.
Here, we'll give you the whole screen.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Let's see.
Yep. Try and get that bad boy in there a bit better. I love it. Okay, and you can still hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay, so the first thing is you have your reptilian brain, right? It's this little peanut type deal. And your reptilian brain is where a lot of the major decisions happen. But all essentially it's doing is a series of good, bad, survival, not kind of stuff, right? You then have your mammalian brain. Oh my God, my art skills are amazing. I'm going to draw the most professional and incredible brain in the world. Are you ready? Here we go. It's a brainish. So it's like that, and then it's like that, your mammalian brain. And then you have over here, which is more like this really, which is your neocortex, right? It's your big front brain. It's your human brain. Now, there's a lot of misconceptions about this, right? We tend to think that when we think something, it's who we are and what we're doing. And that's because this part lights up and tells us how great we are at things. This part is our logical brain. It's our conscious brain, right? And everything we do, we believe is a conscious effort. And that's where it's wrong. Because often we access this and we think through a decision, we weigh, we pro and con it, and we go, are we good, are we not? How does this work? How does that work? Are we going to survive? Are we not going to survive? What are we going to do with that? What's the benefit? Where am I going to take it? How am I going to get there? All these kinds of conscious thoughts, very, very logical thoughts. However, they only take place here. Now, this little front brain, right? If we had to put it in, say, I don't know, PC analogy, or we could use engines, we could use whatever we want. This is like a 40 gigahertz processor, right? It's pretty powerful. It knows what's up, it knows what's going on, it's really, really fast, it's active, it's still $1 trillion brain, it's very impressive. However, your subconscious runs at closer to 4,000 gigahertz. And your subconscious fuels almost all of the guiding principles of this brain. Actually, you do a lot of design work. Here's one for you. You get given a PDF or a document, right?
Yep.
You look at that document, you go, it's a very pretty document. When you're creating that document, you're in a file, you're in an Illustrator file, you're in something, there's grids left, right, and center, there's templates out, you've got fonts and fucking little images to the side while you try and rearrange and do everything. You see and know all of that. But someone who receives the document doesn't.
Yep.
All those guides and rulers and everything live in this subconscious brain. All anyone ever sees is the document. They make decisions based on that document. Does that make sense?
100%.
Awesome. So there's a couple of core truths about this, which is really concerning. It's great. And this is not excuses, right? This is just learning how your brain goes. This is not an excuse, but know that everything you think you are comes from this subconscious one. Everything you think you do comes from that front one. But we confuse those two activities.
Yep.
Now, how can I best explain this? This is like the internet. Your subconscious is like the internet. Your neocortex is like a PC for those who aren't designers, right? It's your notebook, your device, what have you. You're accessing the internet of your experiences. All you see is a web page with some information.
The physical manifestation, essentially, yes.
Correct, yeah. Now, we've established that this is a really strong processor, but this is orders of magnitude better. This little neocortex, the front of your brain, is loaded with stories about you that you've told yourself. What really fucks you up is that this part, the subconscious part, is loaded with stories that someone else about you, that someone else has put there. Right? The easiest way to put it is these are filled with stories that other people have put there, your traumas, your experiences, things people have told you, how you've interacted with the world, and your brain's kind of gone bink and put that at the back for you and going, don't worry, we'll call that up later as a fact of reference.
Yep.
And we step over here and we go, I'm going to think through the scenario really hard. But our brain's already told us what we believe, what our values are, and what kind of systems we thrive on, right? And those can be very negative systems because everyone else has put bullshit in here.
Yep.
So when we call this over and we say, hey, here's an abstract situation, what do I do with this? Your subconscious goes, based on survival, you ran and hit last time. So then your brain goes, I'm afraid of doing this. Okay, I'm not going to do it. And then it'll do everything it can to disempower you and tell you that you can't do it. Right? Let's put it into a more relevant context. I'm just going to step back a bit because I love seeing my face on camera, apparently. Put it into a more relevant context. I'm in an anxiety-producing situation, right? And this is a big one. I know it's a big one for you. It's a big one for me. I have manic depression, or bipolar as it is, and I suffer with anxiety, right? I was deep breathing like a motherfucker before we did this. Believe me, it's if we look at a scenario that produces anxiety or a scenario that produces trauma or conflict, a great one is an interaction with your partner, right? You look at a situation like, okay, I haven't done the dishes, I don't want to do the dishes, I'm just going to put it aside because I need some me time, I need to chill out. Your partner comes in, why haven't you done these? What's the deal? Why are you not doing them? You're lazy, you're this, you're that, right? Logical brain kicks in and goes, am I lazy? I'm not lazy. Your subconscious brain goes, you are definitely not lazy. Don't let her take this, or don't let them take that from you. Fight back. So your very clever brain here only knows when someone confronts me, I have to fight back because that's survival, because you have a history of trauma or you have a history of stories that people have put in here that said fighting back is the only way to survive.
Yep.
So your front logical brain goes, I don't see an issue with this, fuck it up. So jump into that fight, right?
Yep.
Conversely, the more aware brain that understands that there's a lot of those triggers and events would go, but is that really the best course to getting a solution here? Can you not just talk about it and explain that you're really exhausted from work and that you'll get them done in 10 minutes? And there's people on this call or people that will watch it and be like, wow, I never thought of doing it 10 minutes later. Or there's people that are like, why wouldn't you do it 10 minutes later? Because we're all unique. And fuck you for having a better brain than me. But,
exactly.
Because my one was the first one. So
yep.
it's It's about understanding all the bullshit and baggage that sits in the
Yep.
subconscious, informing your informed decisions at the front.
Yep.
There's a couple of other factors, right? Your brain is a tight ass. I think that's another Australianism or a New Zealandism. It basically means very, 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 very thrifty, right?
Okay. Yep.
It's trying to conserve energy as much as possible. No matter what, it's trying to conserve energy. So it's always going to access this story and look for the path of least resistance. Fear, flight, anything it needs to, right? It's going to go, yeah, you don't need that. Go sit on the couch. It's trying to keep survival at its core, no matter what. So every decision goes through this, well, I don't know, that seems like work discussion, right? You see things that are becoming more and more rife now with energy, what I would call energy or attention confusion, things like ADHD and mad neurodiversity, things really hanging on you, right? And that is more a propensity for your brain to justify or give you reasoning as to why you don't need to do something or expend energy.
Yep.
But there are things like elements of depression and anxiety that are used as tools by our brain to convince you that you shouldn't be doing things.
Yes.
So a fundamental shift for a lot of people when they realize this, and I know that you're going to nod to this, is that depression is a byproduct of a desire of the brain, not something that is broken with you, right? It is your brain going, I need you to chill the fuck out for a while. And the best way I can get you to sit on Netflix and cry is to make you depressed as fuck.
Yep. It's the warm blanket that it wraps itself in because it's comfortable. It's been there before. At some point, it was a survival mechanism.
Totally. I mean, yeah, at most points it's a survival mechanism, right? Because they think the mental attack is too much. Therefore, I'm going into survival mode. And you become isolated and insular. Now, in normal day-to-day context, this giant deep brain is trying to do its best to help you, right? It's trying to conserve energy. It's trying to do its best. But often, we never realize what it's informing. So what a lot of work that a coach will do, or even a lot of therapists when they get to it, your trauma will sit somewhere in here, is dealing with what we call the reticular activating system. The reticular activating system in a proper context is essentially an eye-based system, right?
Okay.
So the eye-based system sees things and goes, okay, I want to see more of those things. What the reticular activating system does essentially in your brain is it looks for anything that supports its story. It's the simplest way to put it, right? So if my story says I'm a fat piece of shit, I should eat, then my reticular activating system in my brain goes, okay, he's a fat piece of shit. Should we go eat something? Let's look for ads that have really high fatty foods because that would really get us there. Or it's going to go, ooh, there's something on Netflix I really want to do. Let's go watch that. Or it's looking for friends and circles and support networks that encourage that.
Yep.
It blocks off the things that could change that or threaten that because it's trying to conserve that energy. Remember, it doesn't want to go out of its way to look for something different. It's like, no, fuck that noise. I'm just going to go like this and try and find the fastest path to getting huge as possible.
Yep.
If I have a need, and this is something I do when I coach in the weight space. I'm sorry if it's a trigger for anyone on here, but being fat is really your own issue, and it has nothing to do with physiology. And that fucks a lot of people up because if you talk to someone who's really big and you be like, what are you afraid of? What's scaring you? What's really fucking you up? And there's always something because that's why you get big. It's that warm blanket. Here's a comparison that might be a little weird for people unless they've experienced both of these. The warm blanket of depression is morbid obesity for the body. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not talking about being a little big. Everyone loves a good drink in the weekend and taking a week off. But morbid obesity is depression for the body.
Yeah.
There's genetic factors, totally. My whole system was wrecked hormonally, and I had to rehabilitate that to get forward, but separate thing. To bring this back on track, your reticular activating system is the main thing that I want people to kind of realize today, right? Because what it's going to do is slap blinders on anything you think or say that could change the situation, positive or negative. So then the secret is to change what's said in here, right? Because your reticular activating system is going to engage this bad boy and only show and inform this guy with the information that actually gets it to the point that your internal story is telling you. And where this lands is when I tell people, what's your sense of self-worth, right? Do you think you can achieve things and accomplish things? Do you think you can nail those goals? Do you think you, oh, fuck, that was cliche, wasn't it? Nail those goals, be growth focused.
It sounds cliche, and a lot of this
Correct.
therapy and coaching does sound cliche, but it ultimately works. And I think that's what a lot of people get hung up on. And we'll go back to
Correct.
physical therapy. One of my workouts is literally using my left arm to push a cane that my right hand is holding in different directions. And people will be like, that's not going to fix it. And you're like, no, that's exactly what's going to fix it. Like,
Exactly. But again, this is another thing. The fear.
I don't know. We lose them? There we go.
Hey, we're back.
Sweet.
Jesus. I think that was me.
All good.
It's all right. In New Zealand, internet is just two goats with a piece of string, and if one of them stops, it's chaos. So, where were we? Reticular activating system. So, the thing with a lot of therapy and coaching is that people are actually afraid of the process of it, right? And people are afraid of the process of it because of the energy conservation,
Yep.
because of the reticular activating system. I know this path. It might not be quote unquote good, but our brain doesn't give a fuck about good or bad.
No, because it's easy.
It's easy.
It's natural, or it's reaffirming. There's a dozen adjectives we could apply to it, but yeah, it's ultimately it's that warm blanket.
You got it. You got it. It's the easy path. It's easier for me to be on the couch and know that I get really upset every couple of months.
It's like taking a cold shower.
Dude, I would love to talk to you more about hot cold therapy. I fucking love that shit.
It's amazing. It really is.
It's terrifying, but it's so I've never for me, my personal journey is hot cold therapy is one of the big biochemical stabilizers for my mental well-being. Obviously you have the mindset and all this game that I talk about and execute and live, but the hot cold therapy, if I feel like, you know, when you feel before a big depression sits in, you're like, shit, the
Yep.
slope is starting, right? More like the slope is starting. You start tipping, you're like, oh, and hot cold therapy really helps me extend that drop. So
Yep.
then it shortens the drop. But back to this. Fear is scary, reticular activating system. We tell ourselves these stories that we think we know, right? We tell ourselves these stories that we think form who we are, and we don't. We don't. It's all just noise from here collected in a way that minimizes energy expenditure in this front piece.
Yep.
And we keep telling ourselves we can. There's a quote that I love, and unfortunately I'm one of those guys that has now realized that quotes are kind of awesome because they unfortunately hold a lot of wisdom I was too dumb to understand before, but I went through a very big period of being too smart to understand what they were, right? And a great one that was rattling around in my brain for an extended period of time. There's two that are really, really amazing. But the first one is, I'm not who I think I am. This one's by Cooley. I'm not who I think I am, I'm not who you think I am. I am who you think, or I think you think I am.
Yep.
Right? We always live in this perception of who we actually are.
Projections, yep. Storytelling mode.
You got it. And it's always, a lot of the work I do is around inner narrative.
Yep.
Right? I firmly believe that everyone has this 48 chapter story in their head. Most of it comes from other people. Parts of it comes from themselves based on the experiences engaged through those other people and those other stories. But it's about understanding what that book is and then rewriting that book. Because if you rewrite the book, all of the other good shit kind of happens. Because you remove the chapter about being a piece of shit. You remove the chapter about being overweight. You remove the chapter about thinking poorly or thinking aggressively or confronting people. You remove the chapters on ego and pride and all these kinds of other things that are holding you back. And that's probably the best analogy for where this kind of stuff lands, right? It's really empowering to understand that our brain is actively working against us to kind of get what we want, right? Because what we want, we think we want, but what we really want is what our brain wants. Yep. Which is a nice segue into how thought works. Can I sum up the entirety of thought in 6 minutes?
You can go over. It's
All right.
you can take as much time as you want today, dude. It's
Awesome.
there's no time limit on this. I usually try to put time limits when talking to speakers just so that they know. Um,
Good. Okay.
Last year I think it was like 20 minutes, and everybody went
Yeah.
for an hour. So yeah,
Good move. Good planning. Okay. So 1 second. Let me reset that part of the stream. I'm going to use some analogies here for thought, right? I'm going to shift gears back. I don't need to go back to that. 1 second. Everyone gets to see palm reading again. I can draw that totally cool brain for someone again if they wanted as well. That's can send out a PDF of the world's worst brain drawing.
yes, please. We'll put it in a technical drawing series in the
Yeah.
back of the Cerulean book.
Here's a fucking terrible brain.
Here's your brain. This is your brain on
Your
subconscious.
brain on drugs. Yeah, that's always a great one. I always love that discussion. Yes, drugs are good. Like
Drugs are very good.
Drugs are great. But like
Especially
anything,
I prefer the organic ones, but I think for therapy and things like that, I mean, there's been a lot of. Have you watched Fantastic Fungi yet?
yes, dude, such a good show.
Yeah.
Such a good. It's again like anything, understanding miscommunication, remove it all, and suddenly it all makes sense. Although Andrew Huberman has just done a really good, not expose, he's done a really good podcast based on prolific or persistent use of marijuana to medicate anxiety. That one's really good. If you're
Let's
a
check
fan
that
of
one out.
Oops, he's good, and then he's got a follow-up one on psychedelics and their impact on psychopathic rehabilitation as well, which is really good.
Fantastic.
Because nerding the fuck out over this stuff is amazing.
And microdosing's been a game changer.
Dude, it's on my list. It's probably the last thing that I haven't tried doing, and it's still very big on my list. So let's go back to thought. We now know that the vast majority of everything we think we are, our identification, is a bunch of stories put there by other people and designed to perpetuate that, right? It's the archive of shit is what I call it, because essentially it is. It's just a big collection. You have your reticular activating system that puts the blinders on and tells you the story that I tell you, or the story that you tell yourself is how you're going to see the world, right? And that's important when you look at things like the concept of abundance and lack. Victim mindset, martyr mindset, I don't have enough, the world is against me, is all in lack, right? Because you hear terms like abundance and lack. I like to get through the fluffy shit and just kind of go, well, actually what it is you've told yourself a story that you are the victim, therefore you'll always be the victim. So your brain's always looking for victim support.
Yep.
Abundance, or the concept of abundance, is literally going, yeah, you can do whatever the fuck you like. Just do whatever the fuck you like. Just get lots of shit.
Yeah.
So your brain goes, all right, I'm going to associate with the friends, tell myself the stories, find the supporting evidence to say I can get whatever I want. I'm going to look for opportunities to get more money. I'm going to look for opportunities to get ahead in jobs, all these kinds of things. And I have spent time in both of these, a lot of time in both. A lot of this.
And we have the monster advertising that's pushing all of this on everyone all the time.
Well, it's reaffirmation. So here's a couple of more tidbits, right? And I apologize for how disjointed some of this is for some of the people watching. Sorry, is the stream still up? Yeah, it is. I apologize for the people watching for how this jumps around a bit. But on that point, you're right. The monster advertising that tells people blah, blah, blah. Neuroplasticity is a very simple concept, right?
Yes.
You may have seen neuroplasticity. Think of it this way. If any of you have ever been out into the country or the bush or off-road, you have seen a dirt road. And a dirt road that rains gets ruts. It gets giant channels in there where people have driven because the water collects and it slowly erodes over time. So then more people drive there because they don't want to fuck their car or their vehicle up, right? You just keep driving the same ruts and they keep digging and digging and digging. That is essentially neuroplasticity. Repetition and reaffirmation of the same concepts draws lines in your brain, and those lines are the natural path of least resistance, which, according to what we just went through, is about energy conservation. Of course I'm going to go in the ruts. It's hard to just fucking veer my car off into the trees, right? I'm going to go down the easy path. So understanding that almost everything you do is because you have designed those ruts, and we go back to that, it takes half as much time to take them out as it did to put them in. You have to steer the car off the road and create new ruts and redo it. And what advertising does is, without you knowing, draws more lines because it's repetition. You're not good enough. Your body's not good enough. You don't think clear enough. Why don't you have more stuff? Have more stuff, have more stuff, have more stuff. So then you go, you know what I need? I need more stuff and I need to fucking drink. So, and look, advertisers know this. They play the game well. A lot of advertisers know this. Most very successful advertising campaigns come off the back of psychological research. It's just the way
Yeah.
it is. Right? We're being outsmarted.
Yeah. And it
So,
was
anyway,
very early on that this was developed and designed specifically for this.
correct. Correct. Which is why one of the biggest tenets of a negative cycle or a lack-based cycle for me is like, what shit are you ingesting on a daily basis? Why are you not choosing your content? Right? You have no obligation to scroll through a depressing news article after depressing news article after depressing news article. Your choice is to surround yourself. You have that choice. You don't think you do. You always have that choice. So it's about building new paths, building new pivots, building new roads, building new ruts. So it's really, really interesting. But again, I digress. Back to the nature of thought. And I need water because now I'm losing my voice. Thought is, or consciousness is, look at me sounding like a fucking philosopher. I'm going to reel in and get real quiet now. It's great. Fucking, right.
That's all about education. Like that's really what this is all about.
I know. I'm just thinking of like, what's the cliff note really important things that are actually going to help people that will never think about this shit again? And the first one is your brain is working against you, and there's two different levels of it. You need to understand whether the story is your story or someone else's, right? The second one is, just to recap, reticular activating system is only going to show you the shit that your internal story tells you as a fact. And it will actively work against you doing anything that doesn't fall in line with that. So if you change the story, you change your view, how you see the world, how you engage with the world. And the third one is your brain is a tight ass. It is very miserly with its energy. It's always going to find, it has no concept of good, the path that gives you the most energy conservation. So it's always working against you, or you, right? Now we step into the floatier concept of consciousness and thought. Again, I'm not a therapist, guys. I didn't spend a bunch of time doing any kind of qualification in that space. I have, however, studied neurodiversity and neuroplasticity at length, but I'm what I call a couch scientist, right? Which is where someone ingests a phenomenal amount of content, talks to a bunch of people that know their shit, but doesn't ever go and get certified. So
it's an understanding, right? We're exchanging and sharing understandings about this and not because I think people get caught up in that. They're like, well, how you're trying to be a therapist? And you're like, no, I'm just sharing an understanding that I've gained through, like you said, reading about this, talking to people about it, know their shit, like, and just really gaining a firm understanding of this that can be repeated and shared in a way that is, again, digestible.
Aptly put, extremely aptly put. Far better than I was. You're a very articulate gentleman. Especially when it's 7 now. Good. I'm a bit tired, guys. Kid was up last night. So,
oh man,
it's kids are
the sickness.
Yeah, this is not me. This is daycare, and it's like week 32. I feel like I should have a survivor journal for the honest.
Definitely need merit badges for like surviving those weeks. Like,
anyway, I have a child. That's the thing they don't tell you. I coach people on parenthood, and literally most of it is like, here's some expectations that are gonna fucking rock you.
Yep.
Okay, nature of thought. Before I get distracted by the next shiny thing, sorry, my attention. Thought is not a thing. It's not. You make it a thing, right? I'm going to run through some analogies, and some of these might land, some of these might not. I hope to nail the vast majority of people in my Venn diagram of overlapping knowledge bombs. So, imagine yourself in a stream, right? And actually, I'm going to use this one because it's the reason I hate the concept of be positive bullshit, which sounds weird for a coach whose life is about making people positive. But you're in a stream, right? You're standing in a stream, and for some reason, I'm making it up. It's my analogy. There's waves in the stream. So you've got some waves coming, right? These big waves come. You're confronted with two options most of the time.
Oh, I think we lost him again. So for those listening, there can be waves in a river. It's usually a flash flood, which makes it really bad. You don't want to be in a flash flood. And sometimes you can be where a flash flood happens and the skies will be clear. So waves in a river can definitely be a thing. Let's see if he joins back up. I hope you guys are enjoying this as much as I am. I really love like informative discussions and talks about all of the amazing things our brain does because it is stunning. All right, there we go.
Sorry. I just switched to cellular. For some reason, our Wi-Fi has just dropped. I think there's a power outage. So
You got
we
birds on
honestly
the
don't
roof
live in
affecting the internet.
New Zealand is not a village. I'm just making it look like one. This is quite abnormal, but weird. Sorry about that.
No, you're all good.
We're
I
just
just got off
dropping.
a taller mountain from my last move, and they are still using radio frequencies to send the internet.
Ouch.
So
Ouch.
if there's a blizzard or any sort of incremental weather, you're done. Like,
Dude, that's rough. That's rough. I lived rural for a lot of time and ended up having to do satellite as well, and it's the same deal. You're like,
yep,
oh, it's raining. Turns out we don't exist now. Okay,
no,
great.
but just off grid.
Okay, so back to the stream analogy.
Yes, I was explaining there can be waves in a river too, or in a stream. It's usually a flash flood, so
It's,
not a very
it's a
good.
really bad warning sign when you see
Yeah,
it coming down the street.
yeah,
The answer is you should move.
yeah,
But in your brain, there's no giant flash flood, so you're safe.
yeah.
Right, so you have two options, right? Traditionally, you have two options. The first one is to go sweep downstream, right? You go with the wave. Emotion, thought. Wave takes you. Second one, fight the wave, hold the water back. Just push back into the water and try and push it back upstream, right? That works. It stops the flood. You're not getting pushed down, right? It's a really simple solution. Be positive at it, strong enough until you cave and crumple and it just fucking washes you away, right? And this is why I think be positive is kind of, it's not malicious, but it's unknowingly a trap because it only works in certain circumstances. A gentle pulse or some kind of small wave, not an issue, but the more you push it, the more it hits resistance and eventually you'll cave. Third option is to plant the feet and let the wave pass. You experience the wave, it hits you, you know what's happening, but you let the water pass, right? This is a lot of what I work people through in emotional regulation, especially if you work in the space of anger. I've dealt with a lot of anger, as you might admit, right? Anger
Big
is a
time.
very natural response.
That was the warm blanket for me growing up.
Dude, it's safety.
And
It's
you
a
solved
fucking
conversations by who could yell the loudest.
Yeah, yeah. And when I was working doors and security, it was who could make sure that people didn't walk away, right? Then they don't
Yep.
come back and they're not mean people anymore.
Yep.
That's why you hit them first, obviously.
Obviously.
Obviously, it's self-defense, right? Because you were a deeply broken person like me. So I like this stream analogy because the concept of pushing back works. It's a band-aid, but your dam will always break. Always. Some people have great dams. I was a very good dam builder for a very long period of time, right?
Yep.
I always, in my head, it was a brick wall. All the shit just hits the brick wall. And then, I think by burnout number 3, bricks started fucking pinging out at me and I was just trying to avoid, and oh, look, it's coming down. Okay. And you just have to go through it, right? Whereas the healthier way to process any of this is the thought or the emotion hits you, you understand, you realize it, you experience it, you let it go.
Yep.
Right? It's just like being at a beach. When you're at waves, you try duck under them, you try and hit them. But if you let it hit you and pass, then you're good. But if you're just like, whoa, right? So
Yep.
I really like that one because of the processing element to it. It lands better on the emotional side, but it still works on thought, right? Essentially, a thought comes to us. A thought means nothing. It simply is. And this is a fundamental thing that a lot of people always forget. They always forget that thought doesn't mean anything. All it is back to that picture. It's a bunch of stories and messages that are being fired out by the brain. Like, have you thought of this? And your choice to engage those thoughts or not is what gives them any kind of impetus, right? Any kind of drive, any kind of validity.
It's consumerism, right? The brain is advertising a story to you. Then you buy on through action or inaction. And
dude, that is an amazing. I'm gonna write that down. So good. I came up with that, right, guys?
take it. It's all yours. But then trying to simplify it down, like
I love it.
your brain is selling you some snake oil, or it could be something that worked. It could be selling you again a warm blanket. That's
correct.
Not the best thing.
Like, engage in that buying effort is based on your warm blanketism, right?
Yeah.
If you are really tired, you're really feeling shit, and you have a bunch of internal stories that say, you know what, you probably do need that juice.
Or even there's been, say, real world reaffirmation like of it. Like these things, you had a shitty week, right?
Yep.
Like you just things that were outside your control. You know they were outside your control, but weathered you to a point. They like the narrative, the lens is like, yeah, you want this blanket.
Yeah.
You're like, I
It looks
do.
good. It looks
I,
good.
I do. I do want this blanket. And you're like,
Dude, sometimes take it. Take
and
it.
without a doubt, like, and you have to just realize where you are in those moments. But I think if it's something where it's you're tired of the blanket, like the snuggie is worn and tattered and needs to be washed and shit, you got to start taking cold showers or
You have
change something up that when you realize that wave is going to hit you, again, recognize it, be a part of it, but don't let it consume you.
That's it. That's it. And it's about finding that middle point. Another one for thought that I really want to get across to people. And sorry, a lot of my analogies are water based because I'm a water baby. So you're in a pond, right? Let's say you're in a pond somewhere, anywhere, choosing Amazon, whatever. There's going to be mythological fish, so don't worry, it can be anywhere. It's just a body of water, and you see a bunch of really beautiful fish swimming around, right? Those are thoughts. You're in your brain right now. Your fish are swimming around. Your choice to try and grab a fish is your choice, and it's a skill. Right? Just like when you see it in martial arts movies and all the shit we digested in the 80s and 90s telling us we could all be secret ninjas. Totally why white people ended up doing martial arts, but whatever. It's a skill to grab a fish, right? But we always just go in there ham-fisted and try and grab any fish we can because the fish is there. We can simply choose to realize it's a fish and it's just doing its job and just watch it pass.
It's just existing. It's just part of the
Just,
narrow, the electricity that's happening.
As a matter of fact, the size, the shape, the intensity, the vehemence of that fish doesn't matter. We always, no matter what, have the ability to go, let the fish go, just watch the fish, or go, cool fish, and look the other way.
Yep.
Where it gets really messy is what people tend to do is they see a little red shark-toothed fish called a piranha. And they go, he's kind of cool. I'll grab him. And they grab him. And they go, if I grab him, he looks like he's going to fuck me up. But I'm going to ask him a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to engage with him. And I'm going to see what his deal is.
We'll spend time here watching it and being a part of it.
Yeah. And then you grab the piranha. And the first thing that happens is his 10 friends show up. And you try and grab them. And 10 more friends grab. And then you're just doing this. And you're like, oh shit, now I'm drowning. Oh shit.
And now they're biting onto you because you're coming out of the water and you've got all these sticky thoughts stuck to you that are defining that it wasn't part of the day.
That's it. It wasn't even there before.
Yeah.
You chose to grab that piranha. He was just chilling, doing his thing.
Yep.
Negative thoughts are the most tempting thing in the world to engage with, but they are self-perpetuating and snowball, right? And almost any negative thought chain came from a very definite point that you may or may not have realized where you went, yeah, okay, I'll see where that goes. But a thing I like to say to people is you can never outthink a problem you've made in your own brain.
Yeah.
It's the better idiot system, right? You think of all these amazing solutions. I used to catastrophize. I used to do it. And every now and then I spiral and get stuck in this and I have to catch myself. That's the concept of mindfulness, though.
Future tripping kind of thing.
Yeah, well, catastrophizing, or I call it future cycling or future narrative, right? So essentially, You're lying in bed at night, someone said something shitty to you, and now there's 400 stories going in your head of how you're going to deal with every single kind of variation of those. Then you're going to build on those. You're like, oh, but if they say that, then I'll do this, and then I'll do that, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do this, and then I'll go over here. You're like, it's a story. You're making a story up. It doesn't exist.
Yep.
The real story is someone was an asshole, and it upset you, and now it doesn't exist anymore.
It's gone. Yeah.
It's gone. It's gone. It's done, right? Everything else is you. You are making this happen to yourself, and you're reaffirming the subconscious behavior and response to whenever you deal with this going forwards. So again, neuroplasticity, right? Reaffirmation, reconstitution, repetition. You telling a story in your head, visualizing internal narrative, anything, your brain doesn't know it's not real.
Yeah.
So when you get into these catastrophical loops or these repetitions of internal stories, you are rebuilding or adding more vehemence or more ruts to the road of people I work with are assholes. Treat them like assholes. People I work with. So then your job becomes working with assholes, right? So then the job, quote unquote, of therapy slash coaching slash support method, whatever, it's all self-growth, it's all self-introspection, is understanding where you're forming these behaviors and these negative repetitions.
Yep.
Understanding how you are building these pictures and responses,
yep.
and then rebuilding them, which is actually really easy, right? Here's the way I explain meditation to people. I show them that brain diagram, and then I explain what meditation does is it takes that nice shiny neocortex front end and shuts it the fuck up.
Yep.
And then you can start dealing with the quiet subconscious mind and putting more shit in
there. From scientific studies, they think that's how flow works. They see it works a lot in the same to mindfulness meditation.
Fine line with flow in the middle there, right? You engage enough to be challenging to fire that part of the brain up, but flow is activated when you're in balance with that basic mind and it doesn't perceive a threat at a level too high or too low.
Exactly.
Just about finding that balance in the middle, and it's beautiful.
Yep. Yeah, I remember a really wonderful analogy that I was told when I started doing mindfulness meditation and a lot of float tank sensory deprivation chambers, which are fantastic.
Terrifying, but fantastic.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that just like, for me, I was like, because I already feel this weird inability to feel human in a lot of ways. So it takes away all of this and allows me, or what I think is me, to just exist. But anyways, it was, you're running through a forest. And that's going to be applied to mindfulness, meditation, whatever, when you're in your head, right? And everybody's like, oh my God, shopping list, all of these things. Take it down to you're running through a forest. You're just trying to get through the forest. You'll see a deer off to the side. That's a thought. That's the shopping list. Recognize that deer. You don't need to stop. Your job is to run through this forest. You're just trying to get through this forest. Because at the end of the forest, there's a clearing and there's not going to be anything else. It's just going to be solace. So recognize the deer, pay attention to the deer, and keep moving. Just recognize it. So you're in your brain, you're like, okay, thought, cool, boom. Versus trying to ignore the thought, versus trying to fight the thought, fight the wave, if you will.
Fight the deer, which is never a good idea.
No, or even following the deer. You're not going to be able to keep up with it. Yeah. It's going to run circles around you. Like, it's going to lead you into a perilous situation. It's going to lead you away from this end result, which is this kind of field of solitude and solace and just like a sense of mindfulness. And mindfulness is, I think, kind of like it's counter to it, right? Because your mind should be so empty at that point. Yeah. But it's really about understanding how full and complex our mind is so that we can get to a place of not thinking.
That's it.
And like biofeedback, if you struggle with it, get into biofeedback because you can teach your brain to slow down. You can teach your heart rate to slow down, things like that. And that, again, all applies to some of these aspects of coaching where it's change that pattern, change that rut, change that behavior. Like fold the warm blanket and put it in the cupboard. You don't need
You also, I love that metaphor. It's beautiful. The only thing I would possibly contribute to that is that it's about the activity. The activity of noticing the deer.
Yep.
Is a skill.
Yes, exactly.
And that's where people get messed up. They think they're going to start meditating and then magically hit nirvana, and then all these deers keep running at them and jumping across the track. But the ability to go, that's a deer, bye guy, that's a deer, bye, is a trained skill. It's like any physical skill. You've got to rep, like it's all reps. It's all reps because
there's going to be times you're going to see the deer and you're going to be like, oh, there's spots on that deer. Look, it has horns. And you're like, you've gone too far. You've gone way too far. It's just a deer. Like,
you look too close. Just don't. It's all deer bye. Like, it's just, yeah. And it is. And the practice of mindfulness, because, I have a pet peeve about mindfulness. I love the concept. I love the term. I love the way it's executed and what it is. I loathe everyone who works with businesses' solution to resilience and constant change and COVID and disengagement and be more mindful training. You're like, nah, you're a fuckwit. How about you just learn to process and understand what you're doing?
There's a time and place for mindfulness, and it's not this. Like,
It's like a band-aid solution in the corporate sector right now.
I think it's a catchy sale. I'm gonna be the pessimist advertiser who worked behind the wizard's curtain and just be like, it's a gimmick. They're selling a gimmick.
This, if anyone who's selling mindfulness, because they never sell what it is, which is
Exactly.
the skill of shutting the fuck up. That's all it comes down to. And nirvana, quote unquote, in every traditional concept of it is literally the quiet point when your brain finally stops talking.
Yep.
And you are deep, 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 way in the subconscious.
Yep.
An interesting point when you were saying about physical manifestation and triggers and learning and rehabilitation of skills. Somatic and holotropic breathing meditations are great shortcuts, and I advocate these for a lot of what I would call hyperactive minds, right?
Yep.
And it's not to be confused with hyperactivism. It's hyperactive minds, hyper creatives, hyper performers, hyper achievers, because their endemic survival mechanism is built around going.
Oh, dude, all the time. All the time. I'm always on.
That's it.
Always.
Even when you're quiet, you're like, this seems like a perfectly normal million thoughts a minute. Right? So it's, I teach or work with people to engage in holotropic or somatic breathing styles of meditation in the evening, because I find it easier to force you. It's like being in physical flow. It forces you into physical flow, right? You can go and work out, you can do boxing, kickboxing, karate, any kind of martial art or super serious sport or deeply intrinsic activity like yoga, and it forces you into that physical state of flow. Holotropic and somatic breathing are slightly different in their applications, but I highly advocate them, and they're very easy to get into. Holotropic is about taking your mind to a different place, so disengaging you from the physical reality and your engagement of your noise and nonsense. Sorry, I'm speeding this up because I'm very conscious that I have to go help a very young child. And somatic is more about the opposite. It's about oneness. It's about integration and holisticness. So somatic's about bringing you into that mind-body connection, so you're more as one, you more feel grounded. Whereas holotropic is more like your DMT release, all these kind of like out-of-body experiences type vibe. But then you're actually dealing with a different realm of existence. Sorry, that was a real wanky way. A different style of thinking is essentially all that is.
Yeah.
And what it does is it disconnects a lot of that subconscious and conscious brain activity and lets you just experience. Right? So you can boil all. I tend to find in my practice, if I take all of these concepts and remove the foofy, shiny mysticism layer from it, people are like, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And mindful is literally just, think of it this way, the ability to shut the fuck up.
Yeah. And you just use your breath usually to get there. It's like the most rudimentary thing. People are like, what? And you're like, yes, like just do this.
Mind, that is a very hard skill.
Very hard. I mean, that's why I use my biofeedback device daily.
That's it. That's an amazing idea. It's a great idea. Any kind of immediate other sources of feedback that I find distract you from having to engage in the thoughts is the trick to unlocking that. And again, it's repetition. People do it. I've seen people do it for a couple of weeks and a couple of months, and they're like, yeah, I just don't get it. And you're like, because you're not doing it.
Yeah.
And you haven't practiced enough. Like if I don't meditate daily for a week, and then when I kick back in, I'm like, shut the fuck up. Okay, just shut the fuck up.
Wreck. I'm a wreck. There's a reason why I spend 20 minutes like every night before bed in a biofeedback device, because it's just like I have to force myself. It's like, because I can meditate throughout the day, but I have to just have a very set time that it's forcing my brain to just rewire itself.
Dude, the routine of doing it is half of the reason you're doing it, right?
Yep, exactly. And it's been years. I've used this thing for 7 or 8 years.
Amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. I gotta get some deets on that too. Hook me up with
I'll send it to you. It's wonderful. I can't recommend it enough for people, especially when they're like, well, I can't get to therapy or I have this active mind and it's too expensive. I'm like, sell a couple of your P-Bandai kits in the closet and buy this thing, because it's and they have a sleep one now too. So if you struggle with sleep, yeah.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. I was an insomniac for probably about 3 year. I was doing maybe 3 hours sleep a night.
That's rough.
So that was, but again, I had to slow journey of ramping that up to
slow journey. Yep.
I mean, that was rough, but I did get really good at Diablo 2 at a competitive level. So there's a bonus. Every story has, like, this is the thing. I have this big fucking sob story, but for me, it's a series of lessons and why I'm where I'm at now, and I fucking love my life. So there's always a way to spin shit, right? It's just how you tell yourself the byproduct of that. Last little bit to go back to the reticular activating system, the way you integrate. Fuck's sake, words are hard now. So I need coffee so bad,
Go,
dude.
dude. Go.
But I need my chemicals. Sorry, I mean it's all about inner spiritual creepiness.
Yes, it is all about inner spiritual grooviness.
But the last thing is if we take into account all of those lessons, right? We take into account how the reticular activating system works and all this kind of shit, the nature of thought and the ephemeral nature of grabbing them and engaging with them and all this kind of stuff. Every interaction you have with anyone else ever, is a good or a bad experience based on how you let it land in your brain, right? If you have a shitty person at work, it could be the shitty person that ruins your day, or it could be the shitty person you completely ignore, or it could be the shitty person you learn from, right? Based on how you choose to filter that shit coming back into your brain and landing. And that was one of the biggest game changers.
Yeah, I would even add something that worked for me is finding a neutral place too. Because my brain is always fighting, is it good or bad? So it's going to pick apart that versus finding a gray area and be like, you know what, fuck this. Like, it was neither shitty nor good. It's going to sit here, but I'm not going to chew on it anymore.
That's it. Stoicism. Stoicism is a really great line of thinking and philosophical thought that deals specifically with being bang in the middle, essentially. You simply experience the world. Why are you adding judgment to it?
Yep.
And it's a great way to be for people who have very active minds.
Yep.
Nothing has to be black and white. I actually have a great idea of videos planned for any kind of social media advertising. I'm going to ramp up into that, which is literally around, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept, if you're a Star Wars nerd, but a grey Jedi.
Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it's the perfect analogy for it. You always have light side, dark side fighting. There is a whole raft of grey Jedis that are just like, or you could just not be a dick to each other and just do your thing.
You just be chill, not do shit. Like, yeah, we hold people who do bad things accountable. Like, sometimes they gotta die. Like, yeah, like, yep.
I mean, sometimes you gotta kill a room full of kids with a lightsaber. That's just how you get ahead in your corporate career.
I mean, yeah, when it's a white tie, right? The ivory tower kind of thing. Like, yeah.
Yeah, but it's, there's a great Jedi concept there, and it's specifically about that. And you are 100% correct. That's an amazing point. Thank you for adding it.
Yeah. I just that was something that worked for me in really trying to deal with the concept you were talking about. And I discovered that through therapy. They were really like, well, can't there just be a gray area? I'm like, you can just put them in purgatory, kind of like you never to deal with it again. I'm like, yes, actually, that sounds great. Because for my mind that needs resolution, this will be resolution enough. Because good or bad will be a trial till the end.
Exactly. That's the perfect way to stop. It's a limiting thought, right? It only has one conclusion.
Yep.
Remove the choices rather than engaging them and thinking through them, right? Which is the trap.
Well, and coming full circle to your whole thing about the brain trying to conserve energy, sometimes the brain will work against itself in burning energy, being like, we didn't think about this enough. And you're like, but we did. It's done. Put it to bed. I think that's taking control of your energy again, taking it back from the subconscious. So
that's literally it. And the more you get to a point where the energy conservation works for you rather than against you, is when your energy level increases physically.
Yep.
Versus lethargy.
Yep.
But that's a whole separate discussion.
Discussion.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to let you go because you definitely got a young one and a sick house. So, dude, thank you again so much for your time. And this was an extremely fun conversation.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it too. It's been awesome to have some time with you and finally see you face to face.
Yeah, you too, dude. Take care. Give me a shout.
I will do. Thank you so much. Have a great one, guys.
You too.
Have a good day, evening, night, lifetime. See ya.
Later.
Bye.
Thank you guys all for joining. That was the hobby coach with some. I'm a glutton for information, so some amazing information about what he does and also just really how the brain works and kind of how it works for us and against us. So hope you guys enjoyed this, and thank you guys for all who joined, and hope you have a great rest of your day.